Welcome back to the program. You're right in time for our first conversation this Wednesday morning on our Women in Leadership segment, where we look at what women are doing in their positions of leadership and influence, just what it took for them to get to these positions and the challenges they had to walk and pass through to get to this position. For the same, I have created FaceTime with Sarah Wahogo, who is the current CEO at Safaricom Investment Cooperatives, wears many hats, been to different managerial positions. Welcome to the program, Madam CEO.
Thank you, Doreen.
How are you feeling?
Good.
Yeah. Excited for the show? Very excited.
Yes.
I mean, where do we start? Because I was just looking at your bio, and clearly you have been into different positions of leadership, I should say, just well capturing the segment of the day, different positions of management. But before we get into all that, in a nutshell, who is Sarah, the CEO?
Sarah, the CEO, is a leader, a transformational leader. That is what I like calling myself. I'm very passionate about turning around organizations. But apart from being a CEO, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and I'm your normal girl.
Your normal girl, you say?
Yes.
Your career journey, because prior to SIC, you also worked as a finance manager somewhere else. So then, walk me through how your career journey has been, your career path.
Thank you, Doreen. When people tell you to trust the process, it makes a lot of sense to me, because this journey has not been easy, and it has taken me long to get to where I am today. And I started off as a trainer in a local college, and I was training packages. Those days, probably you don't know, but there's those days where people used to go to college to learn.
I look that young that I wouldn't know. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So we used to train computer packages, but I was specializing in computerized accounting. So the accounting packages, those days it was Sage, Pastel, that is what I was really training. But then for you to be able to take one of those packages, you had to do the usual Microsoft package. So you had to start with Windows, Word, Excel, and all that. So that is where I started my career. And at that time, that is when I also started doing my CPAs. So
at this point, you're training whilst studying?
Yes. I was training while studying, because my interest in finance developed when I started training those accounting packages. So that is when I thought this accounting is quite interesting, and that is how I started my career in accounting. Yes.
You said that it has taken you long to get to this position.
Yes.
And you also earlier on said that when they tell you trust the process, indeed believe the process.
Yes.
So when you say how long, what's the time frame? What are we looking at?
We are looking at over 10 years. I've been in this space, finance space, for over 10 years. And I have been an accountant for very, very long. And when I'm speaking to my members of staff, I keep on telling them that I have been in accounting for quite long as just a mere accountant. And at one point in my career, I felt like I had stagnated. And that is when I made a decision to pursue skills in leadership. So I worked as an accountant. I had started as an accounting clerk. After I left my training job, I started looking for a job as an accountant. I joined as an accounting clerk, and I did that for, let's say, 3 years. After that, I was promoted to an accountant, did that again for like 5 years. After that, I became a chief accountant, did that again for like 3 years, before now I became a finance manager. Yeah.
So it has really taken some time.
It has taken some time, because even between myself being a finance manager and an acting CEO, still it was time. I mean, it took a bit of time. And even to be a CEO, at first I was appointed as an acting CEO.
Just hold it there. We'll come to that, because let's backtrack a bit. And the reason why I asked how long, I wanted to juxtapose that with what is happening in our time, in my generation, I should say, because we oftentimes think that now that we went to school, now that we got the paper, now that we have like 3, 5, 6 years experience, we are good enough to go. We need to be in these positions. But just borrowing from your story, it has indeed taken a bit of time, and some good amount of time.
Yes.
What is this that really kept you aground? The zeal to do this. What was this?
What really kept me going was my passion to change, and positive change for that matter. I think in my mind I was very clear that I needed to learn. And for you to be able to understand business, there are certain aspects that you really need to understand. And for you to be a very good professional, you really need to have done it and know how it's done. So you cannot be sitting here directing people and really you don't understand how it's done. And I keep on saying you cannot be a leader if you cannot do it yourself. And that is how I keep on challenging people. People will respect you because you can do what you're telling them to do. If you come and shout at people and you're forcing them to do what you want them to do, and you yourself cannot, it becomes very difficult. So you have to learn, you have to be very patient, and once you become a guru in that area, then you have the authority to lead other people. So over time, I have been very passionate about turning around organizations. Many times you look at very potential organizations and how they're being misrun, being mismanaged, and you sit back and wonder where we went wrong. So I'm very passionate about turning around organizations, and every time I sit and do that, that gives me a lot of joy. So even when the going gets very difficult, I think what really keeps me going is just seeing that difference and that small change, however small it is. Because again, there's this thing in management where you start something small. It's called a snowball effect, where you start small and you cascade and you grow that positive change to be very huge and bring big impact.
I hear you. Now, let's come to SIC. Prior to being the CEO, you also did serve in the finance department.
Yes.
Again, to the manager, to the acting CEO, and just was confirmed in March of last year, is it?
Yes.
This is one of those big companies, we should say. I just want to imagine the process that you had to go through, perhaps the hurdles you had to cross over to get to this position. How was it? Also bearing in mind that, you know, some of the things that SIC deals with, the investments, these are really known and predominantly looked at as men's jobs. How was this like for you?
I can tell you that it has not been easy, and especially when there are issues that you need to correct and correct quickly. I joined SIC as a finance manager, served for a while before I was promoted to be the acting CEO. Again, I served as the acting for 11 months before I was confirmed as the substantive CEO. First of all, I've never looked at it as a men dominated.
You didn't have that in your mind. Much as you have this investments, the real estate and the likes.
No, I've never looked at it that way, because even in boardrooms, really people respect you because of the value you bring. When you have content, when you have value, when you bring on to the table value, and when you're very confident of what needs to be done and you pursue for execution, then people will be listening to you. So I've never struggled with the boardroom issues.
The gender issue?
No,
gender
I've really never struggled with the gender issues. And I think it's because I've never looked at it as a man's job. What really has probably bothered me is the deep desire to see almost instant change. So sometimes you realize that for you to be able to make a significant impact, it's not instant, it takes a lot of time. And for a person who wants to see things move and move quick, it becomes a challenge. So, and also what I keep on telling, especially ladies, it's that you really need to develop a very thick skin. Don't allow what people say, don't allow what people think of you to get into your mind and affect your performance.
How did you do this yourself? Because I really want to believe, much as you have never looked at it as a male predominantly job, and this is your personality, this is you, but you realize when you look at some of these sectors and areas, perhaps even what SIC, like I said, largely deals with, when you look at real estate, for instance, in most people, they really would often think that this is, yes, would get women, but it's just like they would say STEM. You know, STEM subjects and STEM courses, for instance. So then this thick skin for you, what mechanisms, what structures did you use that even for a woman who's watching, they would want to know how to develop thick skin in some of these spaces, for those that are wanting to climb up the ladder and positions of leadership?
Doreen, what I would want to say, and especially for such a level, there are always those people who will feel that this lady does not fit to be a CEO. Of course, there are those people who know you and strongly believe. So probably the people who feel that you don't deserve may not necessarily bring it out that you are a woman and that is why you cannot be able to do it. But probably deep down inside their hearts, they feel that this is a lady and is not as strong to lead the
much
organization.
As they're not saying it.
Actually, these days I think people are very cautious. They don't want to bring out the gender aspect. Probably they will be talking in other aspects but not really bringing out the gender aspect. What I want to tell the ladies is that this is expected. And the moment you understand that, it becomes very easy for you.
Just repeat that again. Regardless of the position that you're in, just expect. Much as someone will not say it, but they will look at you and they would imagine certain role X is for a man, and certain role Y is for a woman. Much as all of you are qualified, much as they will not say it. So then does it mean you need to prove yourself a little bit more as a woman? So
as a woman, you really need, I think, to work extra hard. Because of the perception.
Of the perception. Because it's true, it exists.
It exists. As
whether you like it or not.
It's there, it exists. People may not tell you outright, but you can see from what people say indirectly, you can always tell. But the way I look at it is just to tell myself and want to pass this message to any other lady in leadership out there, and even those ladies who are growing up to be leaders, that they should expect all this manner of things, people speaking directly, indirectly, but that should never affect the person they are and their vision. So when your vision is strong enough, these things will never affect you. So the moment you understand that and know that people will always talk, and I see this in politics, in all these areas, even where you think that you have a very strong leader as a lady, people will speak, and you really need to understand that. And the moment you appreciate this and you appreciate people for who they are, that will never bother you. And that means that nothing will really derail you from pursuing the agenda and the vision that you have for the institution that you run.
I hear you. I really want us to make progress in this conversation, look at some other things, but just borrowing from what you're saying, I feel like I really want to probe a little bit more based on particularly what you're saying, that indeed this does happen. It is a reality. It exists, whether you're all qualified, whether you all fit the bill, but whether you like it or not, even if someone won't say it, there's that inkling that they will look at you in that manner. So then, do you think from where you sit, and also just looking at how you've really grown up the ladder into positions of leadership, that also there's a bit of culture, societal inclination into some of these issues we are trying to interrogate at this moment?
Definitely. I think when you are in these positions as a leader, culture and generally probably the African culture plays a big role in what people think about women in leadership. Of course, I've heard all these stories where it said being a woman in leadership, you cannot have a family, you know, all these kind of things. Yeah, so you cannot get married, you can't have kids because you're too busy, or you don't have enough time for your family.
Have you experienced that yourself?
People think so, because I can tell you I spend a lot of time in the office. I get to the office very early. Many times I leave very late. The last time I got home at 6, 7, I can't remember, to be honest. So I think, and people keep on asking me all the time, what do your family say about your role? Do they complain that you don't have time for them? And of course I answer them. But
what do you tell them?
I think to start with, I can say I have a very supportive family, and they don't feel that I'm too busy for them. Probably what I also try to do is to create some time when I'm available. When I'm available, I just ensure that I spend enough time with them. But the reality is that I spent a lot of time in the office. That is the truth. So when you have a partner who understands and really who supports your vision and who supports what you do, then to a great extent it doesn't become an issue. But I also know there are many women who have lost their families because of these career issues, because they are required to travel a lot, and someone feels that this is not what they should be doing. So it happens, and it happens a lot. And I think that is where now we really need to sensitize the society to support people's dreams, people's vision, because when you don't, then that person does not enjoy their life, because also there's the aspect of what people are called to do. When you try to enclose this person to what they are, then that is even how depression creeps in. So I think women in leadership require a lot of support, a lot of understanding, and just the support to enable them to be what they were meant to be.
I hear you. And we'll come to perhaps how the balancing, and perhaps even give tips for women who sometimes are stuck between, should I give up my career for the sake of the family? Should I not have a family for the sake of the career? And a good number of them are torn in between, not knowing how to do that. But before then, Safaricom Investments Co-operative was established in 2009 to pursue joint investments for its members and non-members. When you talk about this investments, what exactly are we talking about, and how is it benefiting the common Mwananchi?
So Safaricom Investment is an investment company. That means that whatever opportunities we invest in, the main objective is to give returns to our investors. So we invest in various business lines. Real estate is one of them, money markets. We have also started some new business lines this year. And one of the areas that I can say we have been benefiting the common Mwananchi is about giving our members of the public and our members a place they can call home. So we provide land, and we also provide housing. That means that people can invest and give their families a home. Yes.
You did mention real estate. You did mention money markets. There's also quotable securities and private equity. Between all this, which is the most viable investment in terms of good returns, and why?
I would say the first two. The first
real
two,
estate and money markets?
Yes. Those two form our biggest portfolio of investment, and because to a great extent the returns are almost guaranteed. Many times you invest in land and land appreciates in value over time. And also we have so many of our investors who have built homes. So when you buy a unit and you invest in a family home, then automatically that is development and it increases the value of that unit. So for the other money markets, the reason why I would say that it's also a good investment, because it gives guaranteed returns. So when you invest with Safaricom Investment, then what we do is that we allow you to tell us how long you want to fix your monies. After that specific timeline, then you get your principal plus interest, and the interest is based on the signed off rate of return. Yes,
I hear you. I want us to stick to real estate in just a short while, and also we'll come to perhaps what you're doing to encourage women to invest more in some of these things. But you did say that land appreciates over time. So then I don't know what you think about the capital gain tax that we have seen over time being the talk of town. And yes, indeed, this regime is really looking into perhaps increasing the tax base, and you've really seen some investors complaining about this, because then to some it feels like it hinders and hampers them from getting some of these things that we call land. What would be your 2 cents on this matter?
Capital gain tax has increased from 5% to 15%.
Yes.
And that is a substantial growth. And it is really, really high. And I would really want to urge the government to consider reducing this tax, because then sometimes you realize that the growth for example, a piece of land takes a lot of time. And sometimes really it takes also a lot of time to get a buyer for that specific product. And I know investors have really complained, because you realize that 15% is very, very high.
That's an increase of 10%.
An increase of 10%. And if the government can get to listen to this interview, I would really request that they reconsider this decision, so that we can continue encouraging growth and investment in real estate, so that we don't have cases where people don't want to dispose their properties because they feel that they will lose a lot of their hard-earned investment. So my urge would be to make it reasonable. I believe 5% was very reasonable, and if it's growth, let it not grow by 10%. Let it be a very reasonable growth, that the investors do not feel as if they are losing their investment and they are scared of disposing their properties. Because again, when people fear to dispose their properties and investment, it means that the money circulation is affected to a great extent, if just looking at that specific area of investment. Yes.
You're saying that 5% was not so bad, was good.
Yes.
15% is a bit high. But then the government is thinking of ways in which it can get its own revenue. And we are just about to, get into the 2023-2024 budget. It's about 3 months, 2.5 months to that time. And this regime has been so clear on trying to reduce on external borrowing. And so when it comes to internal borrowing, this is part of the only reasons and ways in which it can do that. So even just from your practice as a financier, when you say 5% was good, 10% is too high, to come to a middle ground, what would you propose?
So my proposal would be that even if we are to increase the rate of CGT, it should not grow by 10%. Even when you're preparing budgets, there is the reasonable growth of a budget line. So 10% is on the higher side. But as a government, again, I believe that there are so many gaps that we can close to ensure that we collect the revenues that we really, really need.
Okay.
So I would really urge that as a government, we can sit down and look at the low-hanging fruits, because I believe there are areas that we've been missing to collect revenues, where people have been intentionally escaping to pay their taxes.
Which areas are there? I'm really interested, so that we can see how then we do not press the mwananchi down in terms of taxes, but look at how we can be able to collect more in areas we have not been collecting, also for the benefit of the Kenyan as well as the government.
So what comes top of my mind is that if you look at the number of people that pay tax, it's very, very little. And what we really, really need to do is to ensure every person pays tax. Not at exorbitant rates, but everyone in their own small ways pays tax. So the government needs to ensure every citizen is onboarded, and to ensure that everyone pays in accordance to their ability and capability, so that we don't have people who are overstretched to pay taxes while others are out there enjoying tax-free holidays. Not the official ones, but by escaping, or rather by avoiding paying of taxes. So I believe if we can be able to bring everyone on board, but again make the taxes very, very reasonable, then that is a good way. Again, the other low-hanging fruit is to ensure that our country encourages investment. Those small businesses, can we be able to nurture them? Can we even look at how our government encourages investment? Many times I've seen small companies closing down because either they were required to pay huge taxes. And of course, for a business, you find that many businesses, they don't have huge cash flows sitting in their banks. And when they are slapped with these penalties and all these kind of things, the easiest thing for them is to close. You also find that we have areas that we can really capitalize on. One of the areas that I've been thinking about for a very long time now is tourism. When you visit some countries outside Kenya, you find that they don't have a lot to offer, but they have packaged the small products and the retail products that they have very, very well. So you find that even at the airports, the airports are extremely busy. You find everyone is really busy doing something, however small. So in Kenya, we have a lot of potential to grow our tourism, to protect our small businesses, and that is how eventually we should be able to give revenues to the government without a lot of coercion, and by just people appreciating the effort the government is doing to protect them. And you find that eventually people will be able to pay their taxes willingly without a lot of coercion.
So what I'm borrowing from you in all this that you're saying is that indeed the capital gain tax increased from 5 to 15 is really quite huge, and in a way if you're not careful, we might just be locking out investors both locally and internationally.
Correct.
I also want you to talk to me about speculative buying, but we'll come to that in a short while, even as you look at the loopholes spotted in the real estate, how to seal them, and also how perhaps you're also using your position to encourage women to get into these cooperatives, and of what benefit is it to them at the end of the day. We talk about that and so much more after this breather. Plenty more definitely coming away, so stick around for that. Welcome back to the program. We definitely appreciate your valid company, and we continue your pace with our conversation on women in leadership, still holding court with Sarah Wahogo, who is the CEO, Safaricom Investments Cooperatives. Before we took that break, Madam CEO, we're talking about now speculative buying. And let me just pick your brain on this one, because again, one of the other reasons that we also saw perhaps the increase of this CGT was because of the speculative buying. Someone just buys land, far-flung areas with the idea that perhaps the government will construct a road, we'll see supermarkets and structures coming up, so then that's the time I'll build. And you realize by the time this land is lying idle, no one is sort of benefiting or gaining. So then how do you draw the difference and the balance in this?
My very quick thoughts is that speculative buying is good. And the reason why I say that is that you find that properties bought for speculative purposes are usually cheaper. And I can tell you, Doreen, for sure that for some of us who have bought properties before, it's very, very difficult to buy a prime property because of the cost, most definitely. It's almost unaffordable. So what many people do is that they buy a product which looks like it's a bit interior in the bundles, and hoping that it will appreciate in value, which many time it does. Looking at areas like Kitengela, a number of years ago, looked like people could not settle there. I have also seen people who buy and build houses in areas where they are all by themselves, and hoping that they can get neighbors in the future.
Hoping the state will do a road somehow in the near future.
Many times you find that after a good number of years this comes to pass, then you find now all these residential homes mushrooming in the areas. So you find people there who are telling you that actually the value of their property has significantly grown. So it's good to a great extent, because many of us would not be able to afford a very prime property. And if we say that we wait for the time that we will afford prime properties, you find it's almost impossible, because again we all have competing needs. So if you can afford an area that you feel that it's good for that kind of an investment for speculation, then I can only advise that you go for it, as long as you visit. Just visit and you gain comfort yourself, and don't, if possible, unless if you are not in the country, ensure that you visit or you send a reliable family member or someone that you can trust.
Okay, I hear you're saying that it's good. Buying land for speculation is good, and not all of us can actually buy property or land in prime areas. But don't you think in that regard then perhaps the state was justified to increase the CGT, maybe not to the percentage that they had, because you're saying that it's too much. But look, who really is losing at this point? Because this land is indeed lying idle. Yes, as the buyer you will benefit because over time it will appreciate, but nothing is going in terms of payment of revenue, especially for someone who perhaps had the mindset of building it for commercial purposes, whereby they'll come and get rent later. At this point, maybe for 3, 4, 5, almost 10 years, it's just lying idle, because this was part of the reason why the CGT was increased. I really I don't have a problem with increasing CGT, but the rate is what I have. The rate is just the challenge.
Yes,
okay.
It's quite high. Yeah, maybe we could have increased to 7%, but tripling is really, really high. Yeah.
What is the worst that can happen for investment? Now that you sit in an investment, you know, kind of docket or desk there, what really is the ripple effect in terms of investment if nothing is done to perhaps reduce it a bit, bring it to what was, or reduce it a bit?
The sentiments in the market, Doreen, right now is that the investors who had invested in some of these properties and would want to dispose today is that they are losing a lot of money.
Okay.
Remember, some of these properties have been used as collaterals in the banks, and it means that for these facilities there's interest accruing day by day. So the investors feel like really they are not gaining anything. So some of them might actually decide not to dispose today because of the CGT rate. Because if you sell a property and you have to part away with the 15%, and remember you've not looked at other commissions, you know, there are other expenses. Again, there's also the stamp duty. And there's commissions for the agents. Probably you also have employees. Probably you had also done some value addition to the property. The investors, the sentiments in the market is that the investor is losing a lot of money. What would have been a profit to them is actually going to the taxes. Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about, just how we can get a good middle ground and a good working environment. I mean, that's also the work of the government, to provide good working and enabling environments for its locals and investors alike. But still on that real estate issue, Madam Sarah, talk to me about some of those loopholes that perhaps you have spotted, or even just within your office that you have seen in terms of real estate investment. Why I ask that is because part of this regime's big five, if I should say, their agenda, aside from manufacturing, healthcare issues, it is also affordable housing. And we have seen the president almost everywhere he travels to in this country, he has to launch any of these projects. In fact, his whole idea is to have at least 200,000 units on a yearly basis. So when you talk about real estate, what are some of these loopholes that are in this sector before we come to how we can sell them?
So maybe to comment on the affordable housing government agenda, I can say that the demand is very high, but the supply is very low. Yes. There's a huge gap between the housing demand and the supply. That is why you hear about all these statistics about the deficit, the housing deficit. And I believe that is why our president is very keen on trying to close the gap. Even what the government is doing is just a drop in the ocean, because really the deficit is really high.
You mean to say that even this 200,000 units that is being proposed on a yearly basis is still still a drop in the ocean?
Yes, because again, you still find that the need continues to grow, because the population that requires housing continues to increase day by day. So that is why we also need to bring the private partners so that we also support the government. Like for Safaricom Investment, we already have an affordable housing project in Ruaka, just to support the government's agenda. So going back to the loopholes in the real estate space, we have a lot of issues in this space. I know every other day we see a lot of stories where this and that real estate is doing this and that, which people feel is the wrong thing to do. But the biggest loophole and the biggest gap is on due diligence. And what we advise investors is that anytime you want to invest in real estate, ensure you do your proper due diligence, even for what you are buying from a corporation. There are basics of what you should do. For example, just checking that the person who is selling to you the property has the ownership documents which speak to their identification documents, they tally. Of course, the checklist is long of what you really need to check, but also working with trusted institutions like Safaricom Investment makes it much easier for investors. So due diligence has been the biggest challenge, and the other thing is just fraud in this real estate space.
Because I really wanted to ask you on that one, because when you say due diligence, which is very good, because again you speak to a good number of practitioners and they'll say that is part of what is lacking. But again also the fraud issues, and perhaps this is why we are seeing the state looking into onboarding most of these services, the digitization process, even in the land registry, for instance. So then how do we curb this? Because yes, at times we can do the most But still, we can never shy of speaking of the fact that we have even covered stories of how one land will be owned by both you and I. Some of these key issues in the real estate investments, which also makes people shy away from investing in such things as this, and also more so women, for instance. So then how do we, is there perhaps a possible proposal to deal with such issues?
I think the government agenda of digitization of the registries is critical.
Okay.
Only that, of course, it was faced with a bit of challenges, but I think that was the best way to curb some of these issues that we see. If we can be able to succeed on the digitization, then we would be at a much better place, because it would even reduce the turnaround time of how long it takes for you to just do a search and just look at a green card and all those things. That is critical. If we can be able to achieve that, even at 99%, we would be at a much better place. However, even with the digitization, I would urge all investors to be extra cautious. And by extra cautious, as I had said about a checklist, what do you really need to check? One of the things I keep on telling investors, don't ignore any red flag, however small. And in our organization, we have a policy that talks about zero tolerance to risk. Because ideally that red flag, which looks like a really small risk, is what later on becomes such a big issue, and ultimately many investors lose their money. So if you note that there's something that you're not very comfortable with, especially when purchasing a property, stop.
Stop at that point.
Stop at that point.
Regardless of how prime it could be.
Regardless of how prime it could be, regardless of how you liked that property when you saw it, stop. Ensure that you are 100%, if not 150% confident
about the
property.
What is one of the most, or should I say the major key red flag that one should be looking into? Because why I ask this is also because we have just said that, and you have also told me that one of the biggest returns on investment that you have also experienced in your practice and seen is real estate, and we can really bear witness indeed that's true. So then we do not want people to shy away from investing in some of these things. So what really is one of the most huge key red flags that one needs to be looking at?
What we really look at is documentation. Okay. Just ensure that the documentation is right. If you ensure your documentation is right, 99% of the issues have been resolved. Because the other things are small issues that probably will affect you, but not you losing the investment. So what you really need to do is peruse all documentations at the registry. Ensure that you have been able to, you have a search, and that is, a search is the bare minimum. That's the least you can ever do. Peruse the green card file. Look at the history of this parcel. How was it transferred from the original owner to all these other owners?
Before it came to you, who wants to purchase it?
Before it came to you. Was it done right? Because we have an aspect of proper title, where if you purchase a property that had been acquired fraudulently, it does not matter whether you have the documents today. The courts will go back to the original owners and see that there was no proper title. So what then happened, it means that what you're holding today is not a proper title. So always go back to the history of the parcel. Ensure that it was passed to the other owners correctly, that their documents match what is in the file, and that there's no mismatch. If you find that a title is reading Doreen, but the identification documents are reading Sarah, then definitely there's a big problem. So it also means that you should buy a property from the owner where you have confirmed the ownership documents of the property and the identification documents. So you cannot be buying a property from Doreen, but the documents read Sarah.
And you still go ahead and buy it.
Imagine.
Yeah.
So
that's why when you say due diligence, even if it will take you a year to do it,
no,
it's better.
Take your time.
Take your time.
Take your time. Take all the time that you require to ensure that your investment and your hard-earned money is safe.
Yeah, it's not going to waste.
Yes.
And I mean also that's why we can really laud the efforts by the government and specifically by the ICT ministry to onboard at least 5,000 services. Is it by the end of this year, up from the 200 existing ones? So that if we can have most of the services on the digital platform, then at least some of this corruption, fraud here and there, perhaps we might mitigate them.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Now there's something that you also said, which I want to probe a bit. Speaking to financial standard, you did say, as long as I'm here, of course that's at the SIC, I can assure of consistent returns. If I find that I'm not achieving what I wanted, I'll just go. What actually came to my mind was the last part where you said, I'll just go. And I was interested to want to find out from you. So then, what is this, your style? What is your leadership style that if things are not working the way you'd want them to work, you're not afraid of resigning? Living at a time whereby people rather stick and glue themselves to that position rather than resign. We keep saying people say that I'd rather die than but you said you'll just go if things are not working. What's your leadership style?
To be honest, I have never been afraid of exiting, but that is not my drive. My drive is to be able to see growth in our objective. And our objective is to give a double-digit return. I can tell you, Doreen, that last year we gave a 7% return. And in the previous years, because of COVID, the returns were really poor. But we've been able to consistently grow the returns. Last year, we were able to give 7%, distributed 176 million in rebates, what people call dividends. This year we are very focused on a double-digit return, and what probably I did not say is that we are also creating a model investment cooperative. Ideally, an investment cooperative should be giving returns. The best in the market probably today is slightly above 10%, but we are focusing on much higher than that. And most important again for us is to make it consistent. What gives me a lot of joy is to see the growth that have been registered since I joined Safaricom Investment, and that is why I'm still here.
And if things refuse to work, we pray they will work.
They will
definitely
work.
They will.
And of course, what makes things to work is strategizing and understanding the business. If you find one thing is not working, what else can you do
better?
So you quickly move. And the speed, I can tell you, is very high.
I've seen it.
The speed is really high.
I have seen
and we keep up and just ensure that if we realize that this is not working, we quickly move to the next thing that
works.
Yes.
And I think that was a very powerful statement, because where you said, you said, if I find that I'm not achieving what I wanted, I'll just go. And it speaks a lot, because then it puts you on toes even as a person. It keeps you aground. You actually realize that you really have to make it work, because then if it doesn't, you already said you're going to exit. Also, this coming at a time whereby we are seeing most people say they rather die than resign. They would look for any other thing that will keep them there, even if when they're in these positions, they're really not bearing any fruit. So really, such a powerful statement from you there. But also, coming to women again, just tell me why it is important for women to also join these cooperatives, perhaps when it comes to investments or savings. Why is it necessary and significant?
Women forms the majority of our population. And it's very, very important for women to invest. And what many people will never tell you is that even when you have a very, very stable organization, a family, partner, anything can happen. And we've seen many, many times where a breadwinner passes on in a family, and the woman in the family is not able to educate their kids. And how I really want to pass this message to women is that women should have investments that keep them grounded and keep them focused. Because again, I can tell you that in this life and this very fast-paced kind of life, it's almost impossible for anyone to satisfy your needs, even your basic needs as a woman. And it gets worse when things don't pan out as planned. And that is why it's very, very important for a woman to invest. And I can tell you that I know women who have gone through a lot, probably because they felt that what they had was enough and they did not need to do much. It's very, very important to be able to take care of your family when the worst happens. So that we don't have situations where you are borrowing, and of course people don't have a lot to give.
And sometimes they actually get tired of giving for those that would actually go ahead and give anyway.
First time would be okay, but when it becomes second, third, no,
they just refuse to do that.
They will not be able. So it's always very, very important as a woman to have an investment that you can always count on, even when everything is okay. Because again, we still want women who understand how the economy is going, the best areas of investment, so that even when you are at home, you can have a conversation with the people that your partner, with your kids, with your relatives, so that we don't have women who just sit and really don't understand what is happening in the economy.
Where we are even as a country.
Exactly. So it's extremely important.
Okay, I hear you. So then what is the role of cooperatives in empowering women altogether? Because it's one thing to say that it's important and very, just as you rightfully say, so important for them to invest. Very significant. You've given very good examples, because I mean, truth be told, anything can happen. We are never sure of what tomorrow might look like. How then are cooperatives empowering women?
Cooperatives are the best investment vehicle. And the reason why I say that is that they give you very good investments at a very reasonable cost, what you can afford. For example, if anyone told you to purchase some prime land in Kiambu, it would be very difficult for many of us. But what the cooperative does is to bring together all these resources, all these investors, invest for these huge groups, but at the end of the day, everyone gets a portion of the investment. So it makes the process much easier, much cheaper, and more accessible. So it does this for investors, and mostly women who would find it difficult to go out there and say that they are resourcing for land and all these other properties. So for women who find it really, really difficult to do it on their own, then the cooperative comes in to make this very accessible and very easy. So women are empowered by investing in a cooperative.
So cooperatives are a good choice and a good option for women to be looking into, perhaps especially as you're saying, for those that might find it difficult in looking at some of these investment options that are viable.
Indeed. This is and before you go to the next one, what I would also want to say is that when you invest in a cooperative like ours, you will never lose your investment. So as a woman, you are also confident. You don't have sleepless nights thinking about your investment and how you can lose your money. And what we also say that if the worst comes to the worst for your investment, we refund your investment money. Yes.
Okay. Well
so
said.
We give a lot of comfort for women who would want to invest and who would not do it on their own because of course of the multiple risk factors that exist in this space.
I hear you. Just before we get to balancing, I really also wanted to get from you, Why is it important for women to get to positions of leadership? And the reason why I ask this is because when you look at also our political space, the way it's structured, we have specific 47 seats that are just specific for women. When you go to both the Senate and National Assembly, we have seats that are called nominated seats. If it's in the Senate where we're looking at perhaps, is it 20, we're having a good significant number going to women. In National Assembly 16, also a good significant number going to women. And you get some quotas saying that women just want to be given positions of leadership. They just want to be given. They don't want to go look for them and and fight for them and also ensure that they get to these spaces due to merit. Why is it necessary and important for women to get to positions of leadership and influence?
Doreen, what I can tell you that it's very, very important for women to get into these positions. And many, many times you find that women don't have that strength. Many times they give up because, of course, of probably competition from the male gender, and they feel like they are weaker or they are not better placed to get those positions.
They're not as advantaged as their counterparts.
Exactly. And also now also bringing the aspect of culture, where if a woman gets into politics, there's all these connotations and people talking about what the person they are, and of course the society viewing you very differently. I think that is the reason why it's also, I think, as a woman, it's very easy for you to give up, especially when you don't have support from your very close family members. And some of those family members will also see it as the wrong thing to do. So the reason why it's very, very important for women to get into these positions is that women bring a very unique balance in the aspect that one thing, and I don't know what you think, is that women are nurturers. They nurture anything to grow. They are also very, very sensitive. And you find that in some of the great institutions that we've seen get to the next level, you will find that there were women who were in leadership positions. So women bring in a very, very good mix of reasoning, where probably you find women being more reasonable, being more careful, being more honest. And this brings a lot of good discussions in the boardrooms.
So they bring a good balance, the gender balance that you're talking about. And hopefully we can get to this 2000 to keep talking about much as we indeed see the parliament is looking into that after that memo that was sent by the president last year. But also, as we conclude, Madam Sarah, what will be your advice to the next generation of aspiring women leaders, those that want to get to these positions of influence, leadership, but just going by what we've discussed here, some of those challenges and issues, they feel like, it's good, but what will be your last word on some of this?
I would want to tell them that it's not easy. It has never been easy. And as a matter of fact, it's very, very difficult.
Truth be told.
Truth be told, it's very, very difficult. Sometimes you wake up and you really feel, I've come to the end of this. But when you have something that you believe in very, very passionately, that gives you the energy to continue. So want to tell women out there that they need to be very, very strong. Be aware of the person that you are, and don't allow anyone to bring you down, rather to force you to be the person that you are not.
I like that. Be very strong and don't allow anyone to bring you down. And I really like what you said, that truth be told, it is there. Perhaps will continue being there. But just keep a ground and understand who you are and where you're going as a woman, regardless of how the tide might keep shifting. You have to reach there if it's in your head.
Sure.
Thank you so much for your time and for your valuable inputs into this conversation. Highly appreciated, Madam Sarah.
Thank you, Doreen. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And I have been speaking to Sarah Wahogo, who is the CEO of Safaricom Investments Cooperatives, definitely on the segment of women in leadership, just looking at, where she is as a woman, what it took for her to get there, the challenges she's had to pass through to this particular position. That is what has formed center of our conversation for the last 60 minutes. We take another quick breather. Plenty more coming your way after this break. Don't go anywhere.